It's been a couple weeks since the second season of Netflix's genre-redefining spin-off vampire anime came to an end. Castlevania Nocturne's second outing did not disappoint, as it gave the main characters of the series some satisfactory development, and concluded the arc of a tyrant who gave Dracula a run for his money. It also left enough open threads for the franchise to continue the tales of the characters we just left, and to introduce new ones from the game's canon that we haven't seen yet. In this video, we'll take a look at the 11 most burning questions coming out of Castlevania Nocturne Season 2, and discuss how the showrunners might tackle them in the coming seasons. So without further ado, let's get straight to it. Before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin. Night Creatures and the Grimoire of Souls, the turning point for Castlevania. Night Creatures are a staple of the Castlevania franchise at this point. Deceased humans whose bodies are stuffed with the souls of demons from hell. They're truly abominable beings. In the first Castlevania series, we were told that Night Creatures could only be created by a select few who had the magical prowess to become Forge Masters. The forging of demonic creatures requires a human hand, because it's the only thing that can reach across all three realms. Without a human sorcerer, creating a Night Creature is impossible, because the ritual involved aspects of necromancy that couldn't be mass-produced like a factory line. And yet that's exactly how the Night Creatures of Nocturne are made. Father Abbott is not a magician, yet he can create Night Creatures and pose as a Forge Master to gain Elizabeth's trust. This is because, unlike Hector and Isaac, he uses a machine to make his beasts, which he acquired by making a deal with the devil. Whenever he dumps fresh human corpses inside the machine, it spits them out as Night Creatures, in a process that seemingly involves the gem that hovers over it. But unlike the first series, these Night Creatures aren't created by making demonic souls enter human bodies. They're made by twisting human souls and giving them a demonic form. The Night Creatures of the Nocturne retain their original souls in their new form, but their memories are repressed. They only surface if the Night Creatures do enough things to remind them of their old selves, and meet enough people from their past. It's completely different from Dracula's Night Creatures, who are pretty much slaves to his will, and it's all because of the Grimoire of Souls. In the game, the Grimoire is actually a series of books that have Dracula's every appearance recorded in them. In the titular installment, Death uses the Grimoire to try and force yet another advent of Dracula, and the players have to work their way through multiple timeline variations of his castle. In Nocturne, the Grimoire appears to be a book that can teach humans how to alter the soul itself, and it originated in hell. That's why we feel pretty confident in saying that it will show up again, and that it will be what ends up governing the fate of every new Night Creature. In the case of Edward, when he was turned into a Night Creature, his first assignment was to kill his old friend Annette, but the moment he saw her, he ended up defending her instead. Every time he sang an opera song in his cell, he recovered little pieces of his true self. At the end of Season 2, Edward led a rebellion within Elizabeth's Night Creature army, and led those that remembered their honor to victory against those who succumbed to evil. His final scene shows him being taken back to Saint-Domingue by Annette, with Richter joining them in their revolutionary war. But will they be able to live up to their promises? Edward knows that people will have a hard time adjusting to his new self, no matter how much Richter and Annette accept him, and it looks like he will have a hard time adjusting to them as well. That final look we saw in his eyes wasn't one of warmth, and we're worried that Annette might have been right when she proposed killing him. If Edward is under the influence of the Grimoire, what does that mean for the other Night Creatures that survived the war? No protagonist-affiliated character has survived being associated with hell and come out the other side okay, so we can expect something similar will happen with Edward. Whether he becomes a full-blown antagonist is unclear, but we do think he'll have a crisis of faith. That will be enough to prove the Grimoire's power, and while Edward's status remains undetermined for now, one person we're sure to see as an antagonist in Nocturne 3. Is Tera the new villain of the franchise? You'd think there would be no doubt about this, especially after that closing scene from the final episode. And if you want more evidence, you should check out our video on the same topic. But everything that happened in Season 2 makes it feel like Tera is going to be the next big bad of the series. And we find that conflicting to say the least. Tera was introduced as the warm, kind, wise mother of Maria Renard, who took in Richter as a child and raised him as her own. We got attached to Tera in Season 1, because she'd known pain unlike any other person. Tera's sister died because of Elizabeth, so she was always going to fight the vampire no matter what came in her way. The only thing she didn't expect to turn into an obstacle was her daughter. Toward the end of Season 1, it was revealed that Maria was the daughter of Tera and the Abbot, who were in love with each other. Elizabeth, picking up on the latter's weakness, told him to sacrifice that which was most precious to him to secure his loyalty. Abbot didn't hesitate offering up Maria, because he thought he was doing God's bidding. The Abbot must have figured that if his daughter died, at least her soul would escape the clutches of the vampire messiah. But turns out, she wanted to convert her into a vampire. Tera took her daughter's place when she realized realized this, and for a while, she did an admirable job of restraining herself, but her first feeding unlocked a dark instinct within her, and for the rest of Season 2, Tera struggled balancing her original personality with the vampire one that was emerging. She manipulated Maria into accessing dangerous realms and summoning uncontrollable creatures so she could get revenge for the two of them from the abbot. When juiced Belmont knocked some sense into her, Tera realized she was losing herself and ran away from Maria to protect her. But at the end of Season 2, we see Old Man Coyote placing his arm on her shoulder, which can only mean one thing. The entirety of Nocturne has been one big prelude to whatever this guy has got cooking in the back. He gave Abbott the device to plunge the world into eternal darkness, and when he failed in his task, he dragged him to hell. Perhaps Tera is going to suffer a similar fate, and worse yet, she's a speaker sorceress. If she were compelled to perform dark magic, the world really won't be prepared for the level of carnage she can unleash. Tera has all the makings of a great Castlevania villain, precisely because we're invested in her character. Like we said at the beginning of this segment, there's little doubt in our minds that she will be the next big bad, but she won't be running the show. What are Old Man Coyote's plans? The devil is not a major driving force in the original Castlevania timeline. In fact, he isn't even in it, and the only time he's adapted is in the spin-off Lords of Shadow timeline. This feels like a major missed opportunity, because in the OG lore of the game, Dracula got his powers by cutting a deal with an evil god. This evil god was then revealed to be an agent of chaos, who's the antithesis of God in the gameverse. Netflix has altered that origin story for Drac in a big way, in that it hasn't revealed it yet, but there's still a chance that vampires are created by the devil. He's just operating under a different name. Throughout Season 2, we kept seeing this entity that Olrox labels Old Man Coyote. He takes possession of the abbot's body after Maria scorches him to death, and sends it to a place that can only be hell. We say this because his second appearance in the very next episode, where he reveals himself to Olrox and is identified as the Coyote, as well as Mephistopheles, the devil infamous for cutting deals with humans. Based on Olrox's interaction with him, it becomes clear that he's supposed to be the devil in the Netflix adaptation, which makes a lot of sense. In Native American folklore, Old Man Coyote is a trickster god who sows more destruction than creation, and is infamous for stirring up evil within the hearts of men. If that doesn't sound familiar to you, let us put it this way: he's the evil god and chaos combined. Trickster gods exist to teach humanity lessons. So what exactly is the lesson that the Coyote wants to teach our heroes? Well, maybe that Richter's granddad is right, and there really is no way to permanently defeat evil. We know the Coyote controls the Grimoire, and also Tera. Combine those two things, and you have the perfect recipe for chaos, which is what we expect Nocturne's third season to feel like. If you ask us, Old Man Coyote's plans seem to be rather simple. He just wants to burn it all and laugh while he watches the flames. He's been pulling the strings from the shadows for centuries, but now he's hiding no more. The Belmont clan has been fighting monsters for centuries, but they've never gone up against an actual deity. The closest thing they got was during Nocturne, where they battled and somehow managed to defeat 2/3 of Sekhmet. Her downfall likely serves as the blueprint for Old Man Coyote's ultimate involvement in the overall narrative, only he has a much higher chance of succeeding. How will Mizrak deal with becoming a vampire? In the final battle against Sekhmet, everyone's favorite conflicted knight has a moment of reckoning. Throughout Season 1 and 2, Mizrak engages in a paradoxical relationship with Olrox. He knows he loves him, but he keeps denying it because of what it means for his faith. Mizrak is a man of God, and he was already under his scrutiny for being a homosexual. By falling in love with a vampire, he felt that he was betraying his very soul, despite being a willing participant in the abbot's mad schemes. Mizrak takes many misguided actions in Nocturne because of his dubious faith in God, which is why whenever Olrox points out the impractical nature of his actions, he resorts to spitting venom in his face. Being a holy warrior was a greater cross to bear than being a monk, because Mizrak was aware of the practicalities of war, and yet he was forced to obey his superior's orders, no matter how close to hell it brought him. When he heard that the abbot's body was taken by the Coyote, the fear on his face was palpable, because it was the first time he got true confirmation that heaven and hell existed, and he knew where he was headed. When he gets mortally injured during Sekhmet's last stand, his veil of righteousness slips, and he confesses to Olrox that he doesn't want to die. He doesn't want to yield his soul to the Coyote for his master's mistakes. So when he shows up to collect, Olrox shoos him away by telling him Mizrak was out of bounds. He then converts him into a vampire, giving him everlasting life to quell his fear of the devil. Mizrak can't accept this change at first, but when he realizes he can't do anything to revert it, he gives in to his hunger and feeds on Olrox. What will he do with his new reality as a vampire? Only God knows. Mizrak resisted Olrox all along because he didn't trust the vampire. He was told that Olrox turned his last lover over into a vampire when he was on death's door, and this conversation cemented their feelings for one another. But will feelings be enough for a man of principle like Mizrak? He'll want meaning beyond Olrox to give his life purpose, and it will be interesting to say the least, seeing how he reacts to his god now that he's bound to his antithesis. If vampires are connected to the Coyote, then so is Mizrak, and his case is twice as strong because the devil already tried to come for him once. He might die defending the man who saved him from damnation, or he might die opposing him. Either way, Mizrak will be one to watch out for in Nocturne Season 3, as will his lover. Will Richter get his revenge on Olrox? After finding love with Annette, Richter Belmont's desire for vengeance experiences a shift. He starts the series terrified of Olrox, but ended it confident that he could kill the Aztec whenever he wanted to. This is probably why he let him go at the end of the final battle with Sekhmet, but not without a promise. Richter told Olrox that he'll kill him one day, but will that end up happening? We have our doubts. If the Coyote is the puppet master of this show, then Olrox is Richter's greatest asset. He knows more about it than anyone else, and his knowledge has already helped the good guys once. In Season 1, Olrox brought the Grimoire of Souls to Richter's group because he knew it contained a spell that could stop the abbot's dirty work. When that failed, he sent the book back to hell himself, while teasing Coyote with the prospect of taking him on as his new patron. Olrox might just know how to cure Edward as well, but whether he cooperates with Richter or not depends on his handling of their situation. Olrox has shown time and again that he's willing to put their differences aside for the greater good. He served as the self-appointed mole within Erzsébet's organization, and no one asked him to bring it down from within, but he did it anyway. In Symphony of the Night, Olrox is the final boss you need to defeat before the climactic battle with Dracula, and that's the only reason we think a fight between him and Richter is overdue. Everything else points toward an eventual team-up between them, which will be a massive breakthrough for one of them. If they do end up opposing one another, then Richter could follow in his mom's footsteps and kill Mizrak before dealing with Olrox. If that happens, it will add another layer of tragedy to an already tragic show, but Castlevania has never shied away from traumatizing us, has it? Richter's revenge quest might just end up serving as the launch base for Season 3, and for the sake of our sanity, we hope it is. Not only because it will conclude his character arc with Olrox, but also because it will probably end up explaining one of the biggest burning questions from Nocturne. How will the gods figure into the future of Castlevania? Though gods are never seen directly in the Castlevania franchise, their presence is felt through the holy weapons that the game's characters use to battle evil creatures. God himself never appears in the games, and the devil's influence is much stronger if anything. But Nocturne rectifies that mistake by giving us a character that can access the spirit world. Annette meets and receives the blessings of not one, but two deities in Season 2, one of whom is her direct ancestor. She's the descendant of the Yoruba Orisha called Ogun, who's the father of earth, metal, and warfare. When she meets him after successfully navigating the spirit world for the first time, he gives her a blessing and a special shield that can withstand attacks from the unrelenting devourer of souls. Ogun couldn't travel between divine realms, but through his power, Annette was able to travel to the Duat and allow Sekhmet's third soul to possess her physical body. She then kept Annette busy while her friends dealt with Erzsébet and Drolta, which in and of itself is a huge accomplishment. Annette can wipe out the souls of Egyptian deities if they disobey the rules of the Duat. So the fact that Annette not only held her own, but technically won, is an indication of how much potential dwells within her. Essentially, Annette's power allows her to bring gods to Earth, but therein lies the problem. Now that she has displayed her abilities, it's only a matter of time before some evil entity tries possessing her against her will, and we think we've already seen that entity. Throughout Season 2, Annette was being haunted by visions of a three-headed spirit, with red skin and prominent horns. This is most likely Ishu, the trickster Yoruba Orisha, and if that's true, then Annette is in grave danger. Old Man Coyote is a trickster just like Ishu, and because he's untethered, unlike Ogun, it's possible that he can cross over into Annette's spirit world. Driving him out will require her to call upon all her ancestors and then some, which will turn the spirit world into a battleground. By involving the gods in the narrative, Castlevania has opened the doors to a permanent solution for the monster problem, and we hope it plays out how we're envisioning it will. Annette was pretty much a damsel in distress in the games. The show has given her way more agency than she ever had, so to see her piss it away on her relationship with Richter will be a major disservice to her. The gods are listening in Nocturne, but will they answer the call when our heroes need them to? That's a question we'll only get the answer to when the series returns, as is this one.
But I could be with you forever.
Will Maria kill her mother? This is a question that wouldn't even be debated at the beginning of Nocturne. But so much has happened since then that Maria killing her mom isn't entirely out of the realm of possibility. Tera proved that she wasn't her mother anymore when she encouraged her to tap into the darkness and pull out a dragon to kill her dad. Though Maria was glad to be rid of the hypocritical abbot, she was also torn by Tera's choice to separate herself because she wanted her mother in her life. But after regaining her resolve thanks to Juiced and fighting Elizabeth and Drolta, Maria has made up her mind. If her powers are meant for war and not peace, then war is what she will use them for. Being a revolutionary is a key part of her Nocturne adaptation, but now her mission has taken on a rather nasty side quest: exterminating vampires. At the end of Season 2, we see her observing Louis the Last's execution, and she remarks that it was a good thing, because vampires and all those associated with them were evil. Alucard looked particularly disturbed by this, because he knows the sentiment on an intimate level. They were both forced to kill their fathers because of what they did to the world, but Alucard was never put in a position where he had to kill Lisa as well. Even when she was revived with Rebus, Trevor Belmont took that burden off his friend's shoulders by killing her and Dracula at the same time. Maria seems to be dead set on killing all vampires, even if it includes her mother, and that is pure Shakespearean tragedy. Even if she doesn't hunt down Tera, they're destined to meet each other at least once before they both die, and if she does, then maybe they'll die together. Either way, Maria is not going to hesitate from striking her mother down anymore, and that's the definition of being resolute. She's probably not going to spiral out of control either, because she'll have excellent company, and we're not just talking about Juiced. What's next for Alucard? For the first time in his life, Alucard has purpose beyond hunting down members of his own species, and it fills him with hope. In the games, he's stuck in a perpetual cycle of killing his father over and over again, while he tries to come up with a permanent solution to his unwanted resurrections. But in the anime, Dracula is no longer a threat, and Elizabeth Bathory has been subdued. With the vampire world in complete disarray, Alucard thinks he would like to experience that life he was lecturing Richter about when he was worrying over Annette, and decides to stay in France to help the revolutionaries. Alucard found their unyielding spirit a thing to admire, and he wanted to fight alongside men who were willing to fight for ideals so pure. But there's also another thing to keep him in France: Maria. At the end of Symphony of the Night, Alucard and Maria become an item, thanks to their constant interactions throughout the game. The show has planted the seeds for the same, with their shared trauma bonding over being father killers being a landmark moment for both characters. The way he looks at Maria with concern when she relishes the deaths of vampire sympathizers just tells you that he loves this woman, and he doesn't want her to go down that dark path. We expect Alucard to become the savior of her soul, thereby redeeming his own. But what we really want to see him doing is duking it out with the devil himself. When Olrox dissuaded old Man Coyote from taking Mizrak's soul, Alucard was there, and he was terrified of the presence before him. He immediately pointed his sword toward Coyote, because he just knew that if he didn't, he would die. We need to see the root cause behind this fear, and what he ultimately decides to do about it. In the Lords of Shadow timeline, Alucard gets possessed by the devil, which would be extremely interesting given the dynamics of his character in the show. Anime Alucard has worked with Olrox before, and we suspect he'll once again be in pursuit of this mysterious smiling shadow. And who knows, he might even be joined by the man who helps him in defeating the devil in Lords of Shadow.
You are no fool, Gabriel.
I am no longer Gabriel, woman. I am the dragon, Dracula. I am the Prince of Darkness.
Will Dracula rise again? In the Lord's timeline, Alucard is actually Trevor Belmont, and his father is Gabriel Belmont, the man who ends up becoming Dracula. Drac has to defeat Agrias, Medusa, and her sisters, as well as the friggin' Leviathan to defeat the devil, but he manages to do it in the end. He had the chance to do so in the anime as well apparently, but he didn't go through with it because he chose Lisa over everything else. At the end of the first Castlevania series, we learned that not only was Dracula alive, he was living with Lisa in England as a reformed man. He vowed to never leave her side, and wait for his son to find him again. Once he had dealt with his trauma, Dracula could have usurped the devil if he'd wanted to, but he didn't, because Lisa had reminded him of his humanity. The show has clearly moved away from game canon by redeeming his character, but will he show up again? Honestly, never say never. If Old Man Coyote is about to unleash the worst kind of hell upon the world, then who better than the strongest vampire in it to oppose him? Dracula coming out of retirement to help his son one last time would be as good as it gets. But even if that isn't how he makes his return, we can never rule out the possibility. Nocturne 3 might just adapt Symphony of the Night, and though we've seen its ending already, we know Dracula can be put in it as a boss that turns into an ally just as easily. Dracula's return will always remain a fundamental question, but these last two are deep cuts that only OG Castlevania fans will be thinking of. Will the franchise switch from the Belmont clan to the Morris family? There's a real possibility that Season 3 sees the shift from the Belmont family to the Morris family. In the games, Richter Belmont is the last known Belmont for 200 years, until Julius Belmont surfaces in 1999, and finally ends Dracula's life for good. In that entire time, the family heirloom was passed on to the Morris family, whose member Quincy went up against Drac in Bram Stoker's novel. The shock of that novel being game canon aside, the bigger problem here is the fact that Dracula might not be the big bad during their era, seeing as he hasn't been involved in Richter's storyline yet. It's possible that Richter will meet a Morris in Saint-Domingue, and begin a partnership that will eventually see him pass the mantle to his ally, until his family can reclaim it. But that's the only scenario in which we can see that happening. Richter's last act being preserving the Belmont family's legacy by passing it on to someone they can trust would be a major contrast from how we started Nocturne, and that alone would be worth making the transition, because after him, there are only 2 major eras of the game left to adapt, and we've just told you what one of them is going to be like. The Morris era will be classic gothic mystery thriller, if or when it gets adapted, but the real hype should be reserved for when we get to 2035, because then Castlevania will become solo leveling, minus the outer space stuff. When will we see Soma Cruz and Genya Arikado? The Grimoire of Souls originally appeared in a game where Alucard was backed up by protagonists who were pulled from different time periods in its history. At one point, Soma Cruz ends up getting involved, and this pretty much takes things from bad to worse. That's because after Dracula's death, a piece of his soul went into Soma, and turned him into a candidate for becoming the next Dark Lord. In the games, the Dark Lord is a title associated with Dracula's subservience to Chaos. Chaos bestows the title upon its chosen, and for most of Castlevania, it's been Drac. But after his death, Soma becomes the chosen one, and when the Grimoire's dark magic messes with him, he gets possessed by Dracula's soul. Even without that possession, Soma has the unique ability to absorb the souls of creatures he slays, and if that isn't the most Arise thing we've seen, we don't know what is. But keeping that aside, the reason we really want to see this timeline get adapted is because we want to see Alucard disguised as Genya Arikado. Turns out, 600 years of wisdom pays off, and Alucard has learned how to conceal his true appearance and strength to keep up with the times. Genya Arikado is the head of a shadow division in Japan, which hunts down monsters, and we just want to see Alucard command his personal army of assassins as he wages war against demons and worse. Marvelous verdict. With that being said, we hope you enjoyed this video, because that's all we've got for you guys. Let us know your most burning questions, and if we've answered some of them in the comments down below. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more Castlevania content, and we'll see you guys in the next one. Until then, stay safe and protect your necks.